You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast on the We Are Libertarians Network. I'm your host, Jeremiah Morrell, and as always, I'm joined by our co-host, Dakota Davis.
How's it going, Jer?
Hey, buddy. Our show is about our lives in rural Indiana. It's a show about folks who are involved in politics. We promise that our episodes are going to be a fun and an easy listen. We interview people who are influencers, elected officials, political experts, and people that we just find interesting. This week, we have a new rotating co-host over in the far chair. Aaron Ewert is making his debut on the Boss Hog of Liberty show. You've heard him on We Are Libertarians a number of times. Welcome, Mr. Aaron.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
Glad you made it.
I'm glad you had me.
Now that you live in this side of the state, we get to hang out a little more. You live down, is it Franklin County?
Franklin County, Metamora.
Metamora, beautiful Metamora.
It's only an hour drive.
It's an hour away. It's like a religious temple down there.
Yeah, it's the same distance.
Yeah.
From where I was before.
Pretty close. Yeah, but it feels closer.
Yeah, I'm on this side of the state now.
Dakota's summer home is down in that part of the world.
Yeah, Brookville.
It is.
That's right.
Yeah, not too far, maybe 20 minutes.
Going down there this weekend, have to do some renovations.
Ooh.
Picking up another growler from our friends at Norris English Pub in Liberty.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Have you ever been there?
I've not been to Liberty yet. Hannah has a lot of friends there.
It's great. It's a really good place to eat. They have great beer.
We like to go to Liberty for photo shoots because it's the Boss Hog Liberty.
Yep.
We just go and take pictures in front of the water tower and act like we own the place. So on the other side of the room, if you're watching on the live stream, we have the first time on the show. This is the second guest in a row that has their own Wikipedia page. It's Steve Horwitz from now at Ball State University. Noted economist, and we were talking earlier, you've got some videos on YouTube that are over 1 million views.
One anyway, one on the gender wage gap that I think last I checked was 1.1 or 1.2 million. Maybe.
Are you pro glass ceiling then? Is that the...
No, the interesting thing about that is that what made that go is it got onto Reddit. It got to the top page of Reddit, and that'll do it, right? And the comments were interesting.
I can't imagine having a video go that strong where you just there's no way to even keep track of the amount of comments.
Right, and plus, first rule of YouTube is don't read the comments, right? So, yeah.
Well, we got 120 subscribers, so we still value each of ours.
All right.
We got to where we had 100, and we were able to get our Boss Hog of Liberty /YouTube, and we're thrilled about that. So yeah, you guys got this good plug opportunity. I guess people can watch the live YouTube video.
Yep, and all those. There's one place if you want to see Horwitz videos. The best place to go is the learnliberty.org, which is a project at the Institute for Humane Studies. There's a bunch of my stuff there, both short, 4 or 5 minute ones, but also some longer lectures too. So that's a good place to go to.
And you're also featured. I know that you've got some interviews with Reason on there and some other leading libertarian think tank type
Foundation and Foundation for Economic Education, fee.org as well. There's a bunch of Horwitz stuff there.
Horwitzisms.
Yes.
So you've been over here for about 2 years. We were talking earlier. You've joined Ball State University in their economics department.
Yep. Back in July of 2016 as a visiting scholar, and then as a full-time faculty member this past fall.
Well, chirp chirp.
Yeah, chirp chirp, chirp chirp.
We see the my day job is up in Muncie, so we see the people wearing the Ball State stuff all the time, running around over there, going to lunch and things. The McAllister's Deli today.
Yes.
So yeah.
Can't go wrong there.
That's right. So this is, Dakota, we've had the most crazy week of churning out content for Dear Leader in the Weird Libertarians world. We did 3 podcasts last week.
We did 3 different podcasts. It was busy. It was exhausting for me, very physically exhausting as the introvert that I am.
I'm being told that we have no sound. We're going to continue on and see if it's anybody else or it's just me. I don't know. It's hard to know. Hard to know if there's sound or not.
I'm getting all of it on the live stream camera.
Okay. We'll continue on. We apologize for the delay here. So last week we did the interview with Tom Saunders. We had the Robin Miller interview, and then we did a episode of We Are Libertarians with Chris Spangle as well. Right after the Parkland shooting.
We did. Yeah, it was a really good episode. We stayed in there for 45 minutes. Yeah. It was. We had some good conversation. There was a lot of conversation about, what an AR-15 actually is. That it is an Armalite rifle. It's not an assault rifle. That's not what AR stands for. But basically, I plugged that into the show notes so that we could just give a little plug in there. As we're not really going to get into it on this show. But if you've been sitting there in your house and you've just been like, oh man, I wonder what those guys over at Boss Hog of Liberty, wonder what they have to say about all this stuff. You can find that episode on the wearelibertarians.com on the big page. We were featured, quite the honor.
So, and then the other thing that happened this week on Tuesday, we were invited. You were invited. I guess we were all invited, but I was busy. We went to the Soil and Water event with all of the farmers except for Cade Coger in Henry County. We went to
Cade's a farmer?
Cade, well, he's not a real farmer. He got told after our show last week, the comments, there were a lot of people that let Cade know that he wasn't a real farmer and he couldn't speak on farm issues because he has it much easier than previous generations of farmers did. So hashtag not a real farmer has been Cade's thing all week. As he's delivering cows and and doing all of the other farm type things.
Right. Yeah. So the first guy with a plow got to say that to the ones who never had a plow.
You didn't have to do it as hard.
Right.
You're not as good as I was.
Right. Yeah, I had to go out there with a hoe. You guys have horses.
Right, exactly.
The wooden moldboard plow ruined everything.
That's right.
Now they're all just GPS and everything else. It's just not real.
I fully believe that Cade Coger is a real farmer, in my opinion. I'm going to put that out there for everybody to know.
So I attended that dinner with the Soil and Water guys, and then Justin Stevens of American for Prosperity invited us to go Tuesday. They hosted the Republican Senate debate,
right?
And you got to go as media mogul Dakota Davis.
That's correct.
Covering in the political world. Tell me what it was like. You went to the MS World headquarters, and they had the three elephants debate. What happened?
Yeah, that's right. We had like you said, the three elephants were up there debating, and I thought it was actually going to be like a big, giant, there was going to be a big stage, and there's going to be, hundreds and hundreds of people in here watching the debate. And then we went up to downtown Indy last Friday, and I was like, hey, we need to drive by this address because it's where I'm going on Tuesday. We drove by, and I was like, oh, that is not an auditorium. That's the actual headquarters for WIBC.
Yeah, it's just their circle. Studios on the circle down there.
I felt really, it kind of like set in like, oh, this is actually quite the honor to be invited to go here, and it was a really good experience. I got to catch up with our old buddy Jonathan Lamb, who came in, our 6th district congressional candidate. He was there for to give out business cards and stickers and had signs everywhere, and he ended up sitting next to me like the entire time actually, and he's a really good guy. I like Jonathan.
He's a Ball State Econ alum, I believe.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. So Jonathan was there. I sat down, watched the entire debate. I got recognized from the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast by about 6 people. That was very exciting. Actually, it was kind of terrifying to be recognized in that setting.
If people are watching the video, you've got glasses now. I assume that you're wearing those just because of the getting recognized in public. You want to be like Clark Kent, and you want to change your appearance.
I have to. Podcaster by night, a regular Joe Blow blue collar worker by day. Mm-hmm. But it was really weird being recognized in that type of setting where I had state senate candidates that were coming up, people who were working for the Todd Rokita campaign came up and they recognized me from a podcast I host in my spare bedroom north of Q Avenue in Newcastle.
The secret is you don't even wear pants; you just wear a shirt.
It's like Anchorman.
Yeah,
he's Pooh Bear in it. Winnie the Pooh.
Why do you think we have to have this long tablecloth?
That's
in front
right.
of us?
It's for everybody's protection.
Yeah, no, it was
especially mine.
Yep.
It was really
more for
good.
Your protection than mine, ladies.
So, Dakota, tell us. People can go back and watch the debate, but who won? You saw it. Rank them for us. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so I'm sitting there during the entire debate. First off, I would like to say that Tony Katz did a fantastic job moderating it. He actually, he didn't ask just random questions, but he actually called the different candidates out on votes that they had made in the past. Like, Congressman Messer, you voted yes on this bill. Bill, please explain your position to the voters. Like that, I thought that was awesome. But I really expected a lot out of Mike Braun. I've been following that campaign a little bit, and he's supposed to be the Rand Paul type, right? The true constitutionalist, conservative, and man, Todd Rokita came out there and mopped the floor with both of them.
Really?
Oh yeah, he did. It was incredible. He came out there. It was the greatest spectacle in politics on Tuesday night.
Little known fact, I fixed Todd Rokita's crawl space.
Aaron's day job is crawl space repair.
Yeah.
And
So
you've taken care of that one.
You're a Washington insider now, is what I'm gathering.
I've been in the
from that.
belly of the beast.
You've drained his swamp.
Yeah.
No,
I did.
It wasn't just like a get up there and be as professional as you can be. He went up there, called everybody out on every little thing that they had done, and just made it super clear as like, if I was a Republican based solely on that debate, if I knew nothing else, then I would be voting for Todd Rokita in the primary.
Mark Warner is going to be thrilled to know that.
I'm sure he would. I'm not going to be voting in the primary. I can't have that black mark on my permanent record yet.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. All right, well, very cool. What do you mean yet, as our county chairman says, yet? You're
Yet.
planning on voting as a voting Republican soon?
I'm just saying, you never know
You
what's
never
going to
know.
come across.
You reserve the right. I understand. All right, well, that's enough of that stuff. If people want to go back and watch that debate, I'm sure they can watch it through WIBC and MS and American
Yes, you can. I think
the AFF group.
It's actually posted on Justin Stevens' page too.
AFP, Americans for Prosperity, not American Freedom Foundation. There's so many initials. Everything's got an initial, Steve.
They do.
Yeah.
There's got FEE and FFF. They're all
They're all freedom.
Yeah.
We need to be the boss. We're the Boss Hog of
Yeah,
Liberty.
you got-
BHOL.
Yeah.
We're one step below A-holes. We're B-holes around here. I got my fancy license plate in Indiana back in the day. You used to have your county as a number, so Delaware County beat 18, Henry County
It's
33.
still on the stickers, right?
Yeah, they still have the stickers in the corner. So it used to be it'd be 33 whatever for Henry County. And the Libertarians, or the Democrats and Republicans had their own. So Dakota and I got cute and we got our L's. So I got my 33L plate, 33L2 yesterday. I should have gotten the BHOL, but the state probably wouldn't let me have that one as a fancy one anyway. Maybe next time.
Freedom of speech, man.
Maybe for the wife's car once once I get a chance to customize Sarah's plate, maybe we'll make her we'll give her the vanity plate.
Oh, I hope so.
All right. So, Steve, you were how in the world did you end up here? You started out in Michigan. You went to New York State, up in my birthplace for a while, and now you're here in Central Indiana. How does this happen?
Well, so I was born in Detroit. Grew up in the Detroit suburbs. Did my undergraduate at the University of Michigan, and I was a libertarian from the time I was about 16 or so. Right. So I even before I went off to college, right, I already had those commitments and. College, I wasn't going to be an economics major or anything, but I figured if you're a libertarian, you need to know something about economics. You're going to be arguing politics the rest of your life. You better know some economics. So I took econ second semester my freshman year and had that experience that I think most economists have, which is go, oh, yes, of course. This is how the world makes sense now. And so around the same time, right, I'd already read Rothbard and others, and so I kind of knew the Austrians and knew from a very early point that I wanted to go to graduate school and continue studying, and that the place to go was to go to George Mason because that's where the Austrians were. And the time I went there, I started before Jim Buchanan won his Nobel Prize and before they were sort of on the map. So that was like a windfall profit for me to get there, and then you're there, and the second year you're there, one of your professors wins the Nobel Prize, and suddenly, wow, okay, now
you're at the spot.
Right,
awesome.
right now, right, yeah. Now it's a it was an entrepreneurial venture that paid off. So I was there and then finished there after 4 years, and in 1989 went out on the job market. And I could have stayed at Mason another year if I wanted to, but St. Lawrence University up in Canton, New York, in the North Country, St. Lawrence Valley, offered me a job there. That was 89, which I took, and I was there until for 27, 28 years, depending on how you want to count. So I was there. Then while I was there, I got divorced and then fell in love. And the person I fell in love with lives in Indianapolis. So that's a problem, right? How do we make that work? because I wasn't going to do the long distance relationship thing, but through
I've made that drive. That's 800 miles each way.
No, it's no good.
Yeah.
That's a 14. I've done it once, and that's all. It's ever going one way. So what do you do? And it's really hard in academia actually to do what I did, which was to make the leap from one school to another. But Ball State, thankfully, at that time was getting this big grant to set up the Schnatter Institute.
Yeah.
And,
so Ball State has taken these huge leaps in the economic. I know Dr. Bohannon is there.
Right.
You're there.
Yeah.
You've got this big. It's not William Shatner. It's the
John H. Schnatter, Papa John Pizza.
Yes,
That's right. Yeah, he'd.
who is people don't know, but he's from Ball State. He learned how to make pizzas at Greek's Pizzeria.
Yes, he did, and he was a business school graduate, and so he has given money back to Ball State and a couple other schools now to endow these research centers, and so this was created, about the time that. Kind of just before, as I was negotiating to come as a visiting scholar, but part of that deal was that they created 2 new openings in the econ department, and one was for a senior person, and couldn't have worked out better. So I wound up not only being able to come out here and have a life and get a spectacular job with an economics department that's doing really great, cool things.
Yeah. So whenever actually I graduated high school in 2014.
Yeah.
So.
What am I doing here with you kids?
This show is Aaron and I are like the world's oldest millennials. I'm born in 83, and Dakota is. Yeah. Every time I look at Dakota, I just go, "Oh my God!"
Get on a Tide Pod.
That was Gen Z. I'm gonna put my foot down on that.
Dakota says those are the kids doing that crap.
So I graduated in 2014, and as a lot of my peers went off to different colleges, different universities, everybody went their separate ways. We all went to a very conservative, backwoods, rural, country school, and everybody started turning into Bernie-type Democrat socialists, and then a couple of them went farther into, Marxism and full-on communism, becoming tankies. And one of my old peers, he actually started a little student coalition that was protesting the Schnatter Institute, and so there's this whole website, this whole protest. It's called uncokemycampus.org or .com. And
so you guys got a bunch of Coke money for running around up there? Is that
right? So the grant, the Schnatter Institute is funded both by Schnatter's money and Koch Foundation money. So it's a combination of the two, and essentially, Schnatter gives the money, wants a name, and wants sort of a vision, but the Kochs have the expertise in how to put these things together and make it work. Right.
Yeah, and the whole ththing, they showed up to all these different school meetings. They showed up everywhere, and they were all protesting. And it was kind of crazy. It's fine if you want to throw all this money into something that agrees with my ideas, but as soon as you start throwing it into something that actually is going to disagree with my capitalism, with my critiques on capitalism, it's all of a sudden a bad thing. And they kept citing corruption. There's it's the same as all these lobbyists in Washington D.C. It's the same as that. They're taking over our campuses, and they're misleading all of our education. They're going to brainwash all of the students, and it was kind of disgusting to see. And I kept constantly getting into debates with him. This is right as I started getting into libertarianism. And he finally ended up unfriending me. And I tried to send him a message. I found him again and sent him a message because I wanted, his side, since you were coming on the show. And he ended up blocking me right after I sent the message.
So when I got there, in summer, fall of last year, it had settled down a bit because it was worse, I think, before that, when the grant was announced in the spring of 16, I guess it would have been.
Right.
Those guys were pretty active and pretty noisy and so on, and some last year too. But it's been very, very quiet this year, and I'm not sure why. We've had our speaker series. We had our first speaker in, and one of the women associated with the Progressive Student Alliance, that's basically the same group as the Uncoked folks, came and wrote a thing in the Muncie paper that was in a complete misunderstanding of what the speaker said. And I sent a letter back to the editor back, and then I emailed her and kind of said, and I said to her, hey, let's, if you have concerns, let's talk. Let's have coffee. I said, I'll pay. I'll even use my own money. I won't use any grant money. I'm broke money for your coffee. But let's just talk, right? I mean, I'm going to be completely transparent about what we're doing, and
right.
and she sort of said, well, I'm busy and blah blah blah, and so I wrote her back in a couple weeks, said, hey, you still, and then never heard anything. So,
right.
I'm a great believer in if you can sit down with people you disagree with and talk to them. If I'm not, I don't think I'm doing anything. I don't know what the problem is with what we're doing.
Right.
I know what they think it is, but it's not actually the problem. But if you can sit down and talk, I think then you can help people understand that it's not, things aren't sometimes what they think they are. But
right, we get this. You get this image in your head of how horrible the people that disagree with you are, and then all of a sudden, whenever somebody comes up to you, and I'm just as guilty of it myself. As soon as somebody that has that opinion approaches you about something, you kind of have that. You're snapped back into reality as to these people are they're people just like me that hold a different opinion.
And I find it this sort of notion that somehow we're brainwashing students or whatever is really interesting for a bunch of reasons. But the most interesting one is nobody's being forced to take any classes. I mean, there's none of this money is paying for particular courses, and there's no requirement. No, it's like not like we're saying every Ball State student has to take a course from Horwitz because that's it's no, thank God for that, right? So what exactly is the nature of this sort of supposed brainwashing that's happening here? Why? I just, I want to hear what I want to be able to ask them is, what's the objection to what the Kochs are doing that isn't that you disagree with their politics? What is it? How are they undermining your Ball State degree or your Ball State education in such a way that you find so objectionable? If you can disagree with them about climate change or fossil fuels or whatever, that's fine. But what is it? What's in this grant? What's happening here that's so terrible?
It's just the opportunity to protest.
Right.
To protest them, and it's there.
Right.
It's there for them to do.
We're having a reading group. Oh no! Right, the world's going to fall. What exactly is the problem there?
So, how many courses? Talk me through the life of a professor, because I haven't had a real life one in the chair yet. Are you teaching 5 days a week? Do you have three or four different courses you take? Because literally, I went to Ivy Tech and I went to Indiana Wesleyan, so I took like Econ 101 and then Micro and Macro, and that was it.
Indiana Wesleyan, by the way, has a great little econ department there. There's several good faculty members there, libertarian type faculty members there. So there's a complicated question in my current situation, but in general, right? I mean, I have this sort of distinguished professor, so my teaching load is fairly low. I teach 2 courses a semester. Typical professor at Ball State's teaching 3. Maybe 4, depending on all that. But I have, it's expected I'm doing research and I'm running this grant and doing all these other kinds of things. At the moment, I'm teaching both of my courses online, and that's for medical reasons. We can talk about this. Sure, I don't care. But I'm in the last November. I had a cancer diagnosis. And so I'm I'm undergoing chemo and all this kind of stuff. But as you can see, I'm deathly ill.
You look very well.
Ill. Thank you.
Of course, I don't know what you look like before.
Right, so fair enough.
You may have gone totally down.
No, it's So no, it's good. Without going out to all these, it's going well. So my schedule these days is really weird because I'm teaching all online. I go in a couple days a week to do some stuff. But hopefully, this will be we'll be in better shape. Come the fall. So yeah, I mean it varies from professor to professor, and there's different kinds of jobs. If you're on just a teaching contract, you're doing a lot of teaching, but faculty who with big research histories and expectations will have a different set of expectations.
So what kind of research projects are you doing? Is it top secret stuff that the Koch brothers are funding that nobody can know about? Is that the deal?
Well, again, things are kind of in a holding pattern right now. I mean, the big project I want to pursue shortly is I want to do a book project on the Great Depression, which I've taught a course on for a number of years, and I'm just endlessly fascinated by. And it was going to be the thing I started when I first got here 18 months ago, but all these other things happened. So eventually, I will get back to that. I've also been doing a bunch of stuff, writing a bunch of stuff on inequality, and I don't know if those will ever kind of come together as a book project or something, but I think that's obviously an issue that people are very much concerned about. I think a set of issues that libertarians need to talk about. We need to be able to confront in effective ways. Right. So for me, that's been a fun set of projects, and some other. I'm going to continue to, I think, do some things with that.
Yeah, those would be good. You have your books are actually available on Amazon.
They are.
We discovered today.
Yes. Depending on can you afford them is the question.
It's supply and demand is in full force with your books right now.
Yeah,
I tried.
I know. It's the most recent one. I
couldn't find maximum utility in the purchase.
The Hayek's Modern Family one was expensive from the start. I was just saying to you guys earlier today that I got to go kick my publisher in the butt because they're supposed to have had a paperback version out by now. That should be cheaper. But the book on Austrian macroeconomics from a few years back normally runs about $35 or $40 on Amazon. I haven't looked recently, but that's a little expensive, but that's not ridiculous. That's not the 120.
I looked online. It's $120 to buy his book, Aaron, and it's $40 to rent it.
Yeah, right.
I don't know who rents them, but you can rent it for $40.
Was there a hurricane?
Unfortunately, they were all stored during Katrina.
If we don't live our model, who will?
That's great. You need to have a paper book one out because I have a distaste in my mouth for all hardback books. I love reading out of a paperback. I don't know why.
Well, like I said, it was supposed to be September, and I don't know what they're doing. So that'll be top of my email list tomorrow. We'll go kick my editor in the rear end and see if we can do it.
Little Chinese kids aren't putting them together fast enough.
And that's, by the way, that's the stupid thing about it. These are all print on demand, right?
Oh, really?
That it's basically when an order comes in, the publisher crank one out, right? So it's not like they're taking up room somewhere.
So tell us about the Learn Liberty blog post that you've got out there. You said you talked about your wealth inequality stuff, and then something called football's concussion crisis.
So a couple of things. So Learn Liberty is a long-time project of the Institute for Humane Studies where and it basically started as a series of producing in-house videos to get across sort of basic economic and other kind of classical liberal concepts. And I did a series of videos for them that were among the first ones, the one we were talking about earlier with the 1 million views, with the gender wage gap one. They were all about economic myths, but they over the years that sort of thing has expanded and gone in different directions, and they've done like courses and things like that. I don't think they're public, but I did 52 short videos on the Great Depression as part of one of these courses. The football's concussion crisis, that was a blog post, but there was also there was a video that went with that too. Short video. And I did a whole course for them teaching basic economic principles using fantasy football examples.
I looked through all of those I was like, oh my gosh, this guy, like, is there nothing that he won't touch on? Like, all your Learn Liberty videos is such a wide range.
Thank you. That's cool. The fun. That's the fun part, right? And the wealth inequality one, I'm thinking, is probably the one with the debate. Was that the debate one with me and the blanking on the guy's name, Ryman, in the red sweater, right? Yeah,
that was the one.
Right. So that was, but there's a series of other videos that are just me that are sort of looking at those inequality issues as well. So, by the way, for viewers who have never looked at learnliberty.org, that's an absolutely tremendous resource now. There are hundreds and hundreds of videos by all kinds of people on all kinds of topics. Faculty, I mean, I use them in class sometimes. It's weird when I use my own, but I do every once in a while.
Hey, this guy looks smart. Let's listen.
Yeah, right. Right. So it is awkward kind of watching your own,
God, that guy's good looking.
And I'm thinking the students are thinking, wait, why is he showing? Couldn't he just teach this? Why does he have to show? Because it's better. It's better in the video. I say it's better there.
Because it's shot from the waist up and I wasn't wearing pants.
Well, right. It's got cool graphics too. So those are great resources that I think faculty can use in the classroom, but I think they're also good resources, if you're in a debate on Facebook or wherever, and you want to share something, you don't want to share a stupid meme with a typo in it, right? Just, you actually have something that's of substance, and they're all faculty, right? So they carry that kind of,
and that's those Learn Liberty videos and the blogs that you've done. They've really kind of elevated you to this celebrity status within the libertarian community. Like, I feel like I need to have you sign something before you leave here today.
Well, yeah, it'll be worth about that much right there.
I might be able to sell it at the convention in May.
Right. Or if you're going to LibertyCon. Now, special joke for my wife if she's listening, right? I'll sign it, but I'll sign Walter Block's name to it instead of mine. So those of you who know a story from last year about me being confused for Walter Block will find that. That's great.
The similarity there.
Yeah. No, it's not ridiculous, right? And you were saying earlier about being recognized, right? When you go out. Yeah, that's it. That is a weird. I mean, you go into academia and you don't sort of, you're never thinking sort of celebritarian status, right? And so the experience I have, like when I go to Students for Liberty stuff, especially the big one in February, March, kind of like walk through the lobby of the hotel, and you can kind of see kids going.
Well, a lot of libertarians do that anyway. They're looking at shoes.
Well,
no,
they're actually
you've got neckbeards and people looking at shoes.
Yes, yeah. So it is. It is. I was in an elevator there one time, right, at a different conference, and a guy says, "You're the guy with the gender wage gap video, aren't you?" Yeah. He goes, "I just used that in class the other day." I'm like, "Oh, okay, great." I mean, it's cool and I like it, but it's weird. It's just weird. It's not what one when you go into this job, you don't expect to have to have that part of it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then the way that I actually found out about you, it was Jeremiah, he had said, "Hey, I just talked to this guy named Steve Horwitz. He's interested. He's going to come on the show." I'm like, why do I know that name? Like I know that name for some reason, but I couldn't put a face to it. And then so I Googled you, and then your Bleeding Hearts Libertarians page actually came up, and I remembered that whenever I got interested in libertarianism, I was working as an electrician in the construction industry, and told one of my friends, I'm like, I wish that there was a political party that had the economic policies that the right is supposed to stand for and the freedom policies that the left is supposed to stand for. And he's like, well, there is. Like, and so I ended up looking it up, and it, for some reason, it took me to the one of your articles. It was a synopsis that you did of Hayek's the use of knowledge in society, and that was like, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And so I mean, I'm sitting here today hosting a libertarian podcast,
right,
as the chair for the county. And I think that this is the guy that you got to blame. And he's
okay.
Well, don't tell your wife.
Yeah.
She's not here tonight, so it'll be all right.
That's that's an interesting one to stumble across too, because I mean, of all the things, right? That's
the things.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a fun game to play, right? When you're with libertarians, to ask them what's the thing that got them into libertarianism, because everybody has this sort of different weird thing, right? But that's I'll take that one. That's a good one.
I attended a John Stossel event. That was my first first thing. John Stossel came to Indianapolis in about 2008, 2009, and that was my hook. My parents brought me.
Yeah, right.
I'm a second generation libertarian.
Okay, yeah.
How about you, Aaron? What got you?
Well, I was Rush Limbaugh, neocon,
just bomb another country. It'll solve everything.
Oh, yeah. And then Ron Paul came along, of course, like so many other libertarians. And, I think I watched that What If speech he did in front of Congress, and that kind of got the wheels turning. And then I found a lot of videos like Learn Liberty. It's interesting that, he was in a lot of them. I think dating back to probably 2012 or so.
Yeah, it would have been around 2011 was the first round I did.
So I started just, binge watching anything I could get my hands
on. It's like
on.
meeting your libertarian father.
Yeah. That's the way it goes. It's like there's a light bulb that goes off in your head, and you're like, I need to watch and learn everything that is associated with this.
And then I was like the Jehovah's Witness of libertarianism, trying to convert my whole family within the first 9 months.
Yeah, you're at the airport with a flower, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of our Lord and Savior Ron Paul?
Yeah, exactly.
That's not funny, because
it was some serious hero worship. When I go back and look at my Facebook from like on this date from 2011, 2012, I'm like, oh man, I was annoying.
And that's right. So that the irony of that, right, is that we had the Bernie Bros last time around, right? And it's it's like I was watching all these young libertarians making fun of the Bernie Bros, and I'm going, you guys,
you're worse.
Yeah, you're just mad because they're imitating you. That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
It's just that the Bernie Bros are better looking. That's the part that they're,
Well,
I think that most of us got so. Most of us got so irritated whenever they stole the revolution logo, where it was a love spelled backwards. It was like, no, all right, you've crossed the line with this one. You're gonna have to answer for that to Ron Paul himself.
So, speaking of celebritarians,
yes.
Who the hell is Jordan Peterson, and why are you feuding with him?
I'm not feuding with him.
Lobster Man.
Lobster Man, yeah. Oh, so all right, so. For those who don't, Jordan Peterson don't stop with the love. Jordan Peterson is a Canadian psychology professor at the University of Toronto. And he first came to fame about 18 months ago, I guess now. when he sort of made a public stink, for lack of a better word, about his refusal to call students by their preferred gender pronoun, right? And there was a Canadian law at the time that he thought forced him to do that, and seems now he misunderstood the law.
Yeah, it turns out it's not that way.
Right. But so he
never let the truth get in the way of a good story, right?
And so he went very public with this, and he became kind of a hero of the anti-PC crowd. And I think since then he has sort of taken that and run with it, in the sense that he has taken his course lectures and put them up on YouTube. And he's this sort of he's interesting and wide-ranging thinker. He knows. He seems to know a lot about a lot of things. We were talking before we went on the air, right? Here's a guy who's in a very secular age, a psychologist who actually knows the Bible really well, right? And sort of can draw on those stories in a way, and that's an unusual set of traits. But I think he's also at the same time sort of, built up this kind of worldview and story about society that is very congenial to people on the right. Very congenial in particular, I think, to young men on the right. Jordan Peterson is clearly not alt-right in any sense of that term.
Right.
But I think there are people who are alt-right who see in him some of his things, sort of intellectual justification for what they're doing. In particular, right, his kind of crusade against political correctness and postmodernism and whatever word he's using for all of those words for them, which I think, that is easy to become a hero by being willing to stand up and sort of get mad at those people about those things. Whether he's right or not is a different question. So my frustration, just in general terms, my sort of frustration is first of all, I don't understand why libertarians in particular think he's such a hero in any sense of the term. He's certainly not himself. I don't think a libertarian. I wouldn't call him one. I don't think the areas that I know best that he talks about, I don't think he actually gets everything right, suffice it to say. And I think if he appeals, I think, to many people's desire to really poke at the academic intellectual left, which it's fun, I get it, and it's sometimes they deserve it, but of that an intellectual movement will not be made, right? That's not enough, and he's not right all the time either. He doesn't get it right, and I think if you're just looking, there's other things. I mean, it's not all he does, and there's other things he has to say, and there's problems with that too, and there's other things great. Just as a point, his interview with the Kathy Newman person on the UK or
Channel 4,
Channel 4, yeah. If you watch it, he was terrific. He was a great role model about keeping your cool and not letting someone get under your skin and sort of dealing with. I mean, the woman was.
This is the one that's been about 4 or 6 weeks from now ago. Kind of came out and ran to the top.
Right, and she was ridiculous, and he got much of it right there. But as a sort of model of how to handle a kind of hostile, idiotic interviewer, it was great.
It was,
and so no complaints there. Okay, but I think in his more. He has, by the way, a really, number of citations and publications as a sort of psychologist, and he's in that area has some reputation as a scholar. But when you're going to start kind of become a public intellectual, right, other people are going to start looking at what you're talking about and say, hey, do you really know what you're talking about? Yeah,
absolutely. And we were talking about before the show, I came across Jordan Peterson after his Kathy Newman interview on Channel 4, where to me as a person, so I didn't go to college. I went to a trade school right after high school, but I've always loved philosophy, and so I've read a lot of Friedrich Nietzsche. I've read a lot of Carl Jung, and I've read on the religious side, I've read a lot of John Calvin, people like.
So you were primed for him.
Yeah,
so you were his perfect target.
So exactly, I started listening to him, and the thing about it is that I keep hearing from other different podcasters that don't know what they're talking about whenever it comes to people like Friedrich Nietzsche, and they always say, he's a nihilist, right? Yeah. Well, he's not. That's kind of what pulled me towards Jordan Peterson was, he's coming out and he's saying, he might have come up with the idea. But if you think that, then you're totally missing the point. And I've liked that, and then I've also been following his biblical lectures, and you hit on that for a minute too. And I do like those. He has an interesting perspective on a lot of it.
Right. Yep. And I think the question, again, as I said before, the areas I know best are, when he talks about sort of gender and women working and sort of sexuality issues, those are the ones that I've written on and know the best. And I think there he's, there's real problems with the kind of things he's arguing there. And I think in particular, as we were sort of talking a little bit before we went on the air, he has this whole kind of confidence about the importance of evolved dispositions that humans have, right? That's the whole lobster thing, right? We're dominance hierarchies because we share this serotonin-based, right, nervous system stuff with lobsters back 800 million years ago, right? And it's turned into the lobster jokes, but he's got a point there, right? I mean, who we are as human beings is a product of evolution, and so we have to take seriously those kind of biological and evolved dispositions that we have. But taking them seriously doesn't mean we have to bow to them, right? I mean, the fact that things about dominance hierarchies can explain certain human behavior doesn't justify that behavior. It doesn't mean that behavior is okay, right? We have
at this point we have a moral compass and a conscience, and we can make decisions, and we're accountable for them.
That's exactly right. Right, and we don't, if biology says men are supposed to be dominant, right? Oh, who cares, right? If we think that's wrong, right? We can do things to push back against that. Granted, it might be hard if we're evolved to behave in certain kinds of ways, and we're sort of asking ourselves to think differently. But we do that all the time. And as I was saying, before we went on, we might have an evolved disposition towards living in small socialistic, altruistic groups, right? But that doesn't mean we have to be socialists in the real world. It's not going to work for all kinds of reasons. Just because we have these evolved dispositions doesn't mean we have to give in to them. It doesn't mean that they can be used to justify behavior. It may be the fact that men, perhaps men, men have this sort of drive for dominance doesn't justify rape, right? I mean, it just doesn't, and that's
right.
And again, let me be clear. I'm not saying Peterson is justifying it, but he says some things where you kind of go, whoa, what exactly are you saying there? In that sort of ballpark of ideas.
I think we found our clickbait title.
There you go.
Did he justify rape? But you're.
I'm just so. If you saw Facebook today, right? I brought. I was kind of preparing for this. For our conversation and watching some Peterson videos and reading some stuff, and I posted something on Facebook, and man, zoom, out come the Peterson people.
Oh
right?
Yeah. You do that.
You say the wrong thing, and whammo, right?
So you're listening to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. We are syndicated on the weekends on Indiana Talks. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Facebook. So any one of those channels, if you're watching us there, you like what you're seeing, you can subscribe on the other platforms. We're on Stitcher. We're everywhere. BossHogOfLiberty.com. You're listening to Jeremiah Morrell, Dakota Davis, Aaron Ewert, and Steve Horwitz. So this Justin Peterson thing, is he Jordan Peterson? I'm sorry. Is he here to stay, or is he like going to be a 6-week flash in the pan, and we're all going to forget about him?
It's kind of crazy. I mean, like you said, it's been about 18 months, and I think that back then everybody kind of thought he was done, right? Like he was going to be done for. But he's got this book come out, and then as I was preparing for the show, I kind of just started looking up different facts about him. And I guess he's pulling in over $51,000 a month just on his Patreon account. Like that's huge.
Yep. It's a great question. So here's a couple things. I'll just throw out a couple things.
As a podcaster, that's a hell of a number to hear too.
Yeah, and
like, man, we and I could split $50,000 a month, Dakota, if we were just better at what we did.
Yeah, you could upgrade from the bells.
That's right.
I think. Look,
we having Hennessy in here.
I think that I don't think he has sort of really long run staying power doing what he's doing, but he may last longer than people think, because I think that there's a market for what the kind of thing he's doing, and other people, Ben Shapiro, who's basically an idiot, but sort of doing the same shtick, right? That sort of these independent.
Are you okay, Dakota?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a huge fan of Shapiro.
And it's sort of these independent public intellectuals, I think, is the best way to think about it, right?
Yeah, that is a great way to put it.
And I think that what people are frustrated with academics, they're frustrated with the media. So these folks who have been able, and I think that's why the Patreon thing is particularly cool here. I mean, Peterson is an academic, but he made his name by stabbing his own people in the back, right, with all this anti-PC stuff. And so the fact that you can do Patreon and do these other kinds of independent ways of making a living, speaking tours or whatever, doing this is really interesting. And so, and then put on top of that the the social media and stuff where you can get those ideas out really quickly.
And the free Canadian healthcare.
Well, there's right.
I mean, come on.
And all that means is that I think you're gonna see more of these kind of people popping up like this who can take advantage of that constellation. And the thing about Peterson, he's a very good speaker, right? And he's got a good, interesting style, and he knows how to use social media. And so he's clever in those, and I mean that genuinely. He's clever in those ways. So I think he's not going to go away anytime soon. But I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna. If the question is, in 25 years, are people going to be reading Jordan Peterson, looking for wisdom? No. But in 5 years, is he still going to be doing the lecture circuit? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I think it says a lot to the fact that there's a lot of broken young men in this country. Well, and they're looking for someone. Yeah, I think they're looking for advice on how to run their life.
I do think, so, that's a much bigger conversation. But I do think there's something to that. I do think that for us men sitting around the table having this conversation, which makes it even more interesting. But yeah, I do think there's a sense in which there are more young men these days who are lost and who are not clear on what it is they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to be. And Peterson, again, has a point in saying that shifting gender norms have made that more confusing for young men, right? How do you navigate a world in which, women's roles have changed, and now with Me Too, what are the expectations there? Those are all legitimate kinds of questions to raise and legitimate ways in which men have to figure stuff out. But they got to figure it out, and I'm not sure Peterson has the answers. But I do think he's pointing to he's tapped into something that's quite real.
Right.
Yeah. So another thing that we wanted to get into tonight was was some real world application of this theory, because I'm like the world's least read libertarian or the worst read libertarian. But practical stuff and practical application is what hits home for me, and I think a lot of our listeners are going to be somewhat similar. And there's this talk of price gouging that we've talked about. In episode 19, we kind of got into it a little bit, and I embraced it and kind of pitched it to Sean Rao, and he said, I don't know if I believe that or not. But the thought is that, price gouging is not immoral. It's actually it's the allocation of resources. Right. So it's during a hurricane, if somebody, all of a sudden, last summer, late summer, we had these hurricanes in Texas. Yep. Nobody had any water, so somebody like Aaron loads up his pickup truck and goes down with 4 pallets of water and sells them at an egregious profit. Yeah,
I've actually done that before, but we gave them away.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Which is fine too.
Evil libertarians,
But but if you do that, then the reason why the price gouging view is that it's moral or it's right is because it's an allocation of resources. People don't store it; they don't hoard it. Right.
Right. There's a couple things going on. So a couple things here. First, it's important, I think, to understand that term price gouging has no objective economic content to it. Right. It's a term of critique that price gouging is you're charging a price I think is too high. Right, that's what it means. And so I've been trying really hard to not use, sometimes price gouging. But what I really like to say is, let's talk about the economics of emergency pricing, because that's what we're really concerned about here, right? How do we price things in an emergency? Right. And so I think you've got one of the 2 points there, Jeremiah. One is when you allow people to charge the market price, $10 for a bag of ice or whatever, for a 6-pack of water, whatever it is, right? The first thing that happens in the immediate run is it forces people to make the difficult decisions about how to use that resource. Do I really need to give my dog a bath if water is $10 a bottle? No, I'm going to use it for the really important stuff. And that's so think of it this way. We have in an emergency like this, we have a problem. We have lots of people who want these important goods, and we don't have enough of them to go around. And so the question is, how do we get more of these goods into the hands of the people who really need them? That's the problem to solve. Okay. One way to solve that problem is to make sure that the supply we do have gets used wisely. So high price forces people to make the difficult decisions, use it for the most important things. But the second part, I think, is actually perhaps even more important, which is what that high price does is it signals people like Aaron to say, you got a truck? Go to your Walmart, 200 miles away, load up on water, drive it over here, because that price is like my friend Art Carden would say, is a signal flare, right? It's sending out this huge signal that says not only informing you of this opportunity, but incentivizing you to take advantage of it. So get in your truck, get your water, get down there, start selling the water. And so what happens over time is that high price encourages people to come in with supplies of the good. That increases the supply. That begins to drive the price back down, and that begins to solve the problem by getting more of the resource into more people's hands.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit about this on our Sean Rao episode, the very first one that he came on, which was one of the most downloaded episodes
Episode
we
19,
had.
yeah.
So it was a good one, but I mentioned in our little planning chat that this is a great opportunity because he just did a much better job of explaining that than what we did on episode 19.
Well, and it's,
hey, look, I went on live CNN right after this Attorney General of Florida and did it. So if I can do it there,
yeah, I would hope so.
So,
yeah,
I'm an Uber driver, right? And the same thing happens as an Uber driver where there's a surge. It's the same thing as surge pricing. You send up that signal flare you're talking about,
right?
And the map literally goes red and says, hey, there's a concert that just let out at Klipsch Music Center in Fishers, Indiana.
Right.
We need drivers desperately. So now we're paying 3 times the normal rate for drivers up there. That's exactly what's happening in that case.
And you're sitting at home watching TV and now suddenly go,
it's worth my time.
Right, exactly. Right, so that's same process.
What do you think the repercussions would be if the state ended up implementing price caps?
Well, most states have them, or at least what they do is they say, report someone who's charging, an outrageous price. Well, you exacerbate the shortages, right? I mean, what you do is you discourage people from bringing in new supplies because it's not worth it to jump in your truck and come if you can't get at least a certain price for it, right?
So now you're thirsty. Congratulations.
Right. Well, there's a famous story that my friend Mike Munger tells, and it's a true story of North Carolina after one of the hurricanes where there was a big truck full of ice. They were selling ice, but at a really high price. The people waiting in line, and they call the cops, and the cops come and sort of charge them with violating the consumer protection laws or whatever. And the cops take the ice and dump the ice out onto the ground.
No, nobody has ice.
Right. Well, the interesting question is, what do you think the crowd waiting in line for the ice did? Right. Your first thing is to assume that they would be all pissed off that they applauded. Right. It's like, whoa, what does that mean? Right. So it's. Again, so as we think about these things, right? So if we go back to what if we put the cap on, right? We then and notice, right? If you put the price control on, you don't get rid of competition. Now the competition just shifts from willingness to pay to, do you know someone who has ice? Are you more likely to now club someone over the head and take their ice? Because, right? I mean, all kinds of other ways of allocating resources. And when I teach this to my intro students, right, one of the things I say is you can allocate resources in a bunch of different ways. You can allocate by price. You can do it by random. You can first come, first serve. All of those, except for price, have one big disadvantage to them, which is they do nothing to help encourage new supply. Like it's as if there's this big thing of ice in the middle of the room, and we just got to decide how to divide it up. What nobody's thinking about is how do we get another big pile of ice into the middle of the room? If you let prices rise, allocation by price allows you to solve that problem. Allows you to to encourage production.
My day job is a salesman. So I deal in markets all the time. It's steel.
Yeah.
So I'm selling steel. I'm always searching for the price. A part of me is setting the market, and a part of me is reacting to the market.
Yep.
If I decide that steel needs to be 10% higher, then I charge 10% higher, then I don't sell anything.
Right.
And I'm like, well, damn, that didn't work.
Right.
So then I got to go searching for what the new price is.
And you just
it
use
changes every day.
Exact right word, which is searching, right? That's what price searchers, right? You're trying to discover, and that's a very Hayekian kind of way of thinking about it, right? Which is you're trying to discover where that price quantity combination is that actually enables you to make, and you don't know ahead of time, right?
I have no idea.
The cool part, right, is we draw those demand and supply curves up in the blackboard, and we're pretending, right, as if we know. But in the real world, right, producers don't know what their demand curves and supply curves look like. That's what they're trying to figure out, right?
And I deal, I may have 4 or 5 different competitors. The thing that retards it, and this is, that people don't know that this happens in a lot of places, but I don't compete in an entirely free market because the government plays. I sell government jobs. And the government says, well, on this job, you're going to have 10% as a disadvantaged business. Right. So I may be 10% cheaper or 15% cheaper, but the contractor has to use a disadvantaged business who may be, that 15 or 20% higher than me, but he's going to use his number.
Yeah.
So the true market price doesn't always win when the government gets involved.
Yeah, right. And again, that's that. And that becomes, that's the source of all other kinds of problems, too. We talk about.
But yeah, that's what, I guess with my day job, markets are always, the solution. I always look at things through that lens. Yep. And the more pure a market is, the better it behaves, and the more it makes sense. Right. And everybody can operate properly.
And so here's the thing to think about, right? That one of the things, we people on the left all the time talking about privilege this and privilege that. Well, one of the great things about really free markets is that no one, at least in the context of that market, is privileged. When we think about what are monopolists, we think about the taxi cabs and Uber, right? What are the taxi cabs? They have a privilege, which is they have this monopoly license, right? And the ability to go to the local folks and shut out Uber or whatever the case may be, right? I'm very, by the way, love living in Indy, which is a terrific Uber city. It's one of the best, actually, Uber cities I've ever lived in or been around. So, but anyway, so those notions of monopoly privilege or protection from the state and all the ways that we're talking about, right? If we want to talk about privilege, let's talk about that too, because those are ways in which some people benefit by extracting from other people rather than through the mutual benefit of genuine trade.
Yep. You just if that point was a nail, you were a hammer. I have nothing more to add to that. That was great.
So the other big thing that I wanted to do to apply something, and this is a theme that we've had in our local area, Henry County, Indiana, has been like I've described to Dakota lately that like wind farms and the proposal of building industrial wind farms has turned into like abortion, like literally like. It is the most divisive issue in our community for the last 3 to 4 years.
It has, and it's been really sad. It's just been a horrible thing to witness because, like we were talking about what happened last week, Cade being told that he's not a real farmer, and that's because he supports wind energy. Right. Like people are attacking each other from all over the place. But the one thing that we wanted to talk about was one of the things that our county council has control over, and that is the tax abatements that go into the wind farms, and what those tax abatements and what those subsidies actually do whenever it comes to sustainable energy. Because as a person who works in the electrical field, I think it's really interesting. However, they're not efficient enough.
Right. That's right. Right. So one thing we can play with here is sustainable. Right. So the irony is that we have these ways of producing what we believe is sustainable energy that are not economically sustainable. Right. And so why do you need the tax abatements? Why do you need the subsidies? Because it's not yet, at least anyway, profitable to wind energy isn't sufficiently profitable, right, to pay for itself. So the only way you're going to get people to do this is to subsidize them somehow, right?
So at this point, the industry is set up in a way, to give general background, the federal government says that the energy utilities must provide a certain amount of clean energy. Yep. So if it might be 5% or 10% or depending upon where you're at, there's a certain bogey they have to hit. Mm-hmm. So they're creating a demand.
Yes, right.
So they have to buy a certain amount of hydro or solar or wind power. Right. And then the governments will give a benefit to somebody to bring in a factory to build the turbines or to build to build all of the materials that go into building this thing.
Right.
And then you have a local community that's trying to attract one that says, hey, you're going to put in a $300 million investment in our community. We're going to give you – in Indiana, we have property taxes. Right. So we have – it would be taxed at up to 3% of the value. So the county or the community will say, I'm going to give you 10 years
of no
taxes.
Yeah.
So at every level, we find ourselves giving this benefit or this discount to make this compete.
Right. And so, libertarians might say, okay, great, you're not taxing them. That's good. Except the problem here is, right, well, no, you're now, you've unleveled the playing field in a way that ends up granting a privilege to these firms, right?
Whereas a guy that has, Rob Davis has Spiceland Wood Products in Spiceland, Indiana, and he's been there for 20 years, and you're not offering him anything.
That's right. So, so you have this sort of combination of, well, we're going to mandate minimum amounts of clean energy, right, even though it may or may not be profitable. And by the way, solar's getting better than it used to be, so it's almost sustainable, economically sustainable. So we're going to do that, and then to make sure that happens, we're going to have to give the subsidies or abatements. We're going to do the other kind of things. And so what you also end up doing here, of course, is now you've got all these companies who are competing not to necessarily provide the best wind power, but to be able to convince the county legislature and the state legislature to favor them over the other ones who might build the turbines or and all that too. And I suspect where I was in New York had some of this debate too. But part of the debate is do the turbines themselves? They got to go on people's property. Are they ugly? Do they make noise? Do they chop the birds flying? There's all these sort of what economists would call externality issues here about them that and it's not in my backyard. It's all that kind of stuff too.
Right. So, you're being in northern New York. That's what I'm very familiar with St. Lawrence County, New York. You've got one of the largest hydroelectric dams in North America right there.
Yeah.
And we all want power. To run this studio, we have 2 massive lights that are on us. We've got computers. We've got, we have to have electricity to live our modern lives, to put this show out, to keep our food cold. Everything we do, we need power. So it could be coal, which is dirty and nasty. It could
But
be but cheap. It could be hydroelectric,
Unless
which
you're
is
Trump,
cheap, but then it has
clinical.
environmental problems where we've
Right.
got, we create a lake where there used to be a river,
Right.
Or we have these windmills that
Right.
people cry about for, there are all kinds of different logical reasons
Right.
why you can be opposed and why you're in favor, and I understand them.
And there's trade-offs with all these, right? All of them have costs and benefits. And the problem is, how do we best assess those? And I think what economists say is that's what markets are for, right? Is trying to help us figure out the economic efficiency question. Is it worth it to do this, that, or the other? And it may be that even if we have this kind of commitment to clean energy, the resources. It might be true that using cleaner energy saves us has certain savings in terms of pollution, but is using up resources in other kinds of ways. Why do we necessarily favor one over the other? I mean, if you can say, right, there's a marginal impact on pollution, but at the same time, if we're using up all these financial resources to support this thing that can't sustain itself economically, those are things that future generations don't have either, right? Because we've taken those resources from them to use for these subsidies today. And so those are however one comes down on that, we have to at least recognize that those are the trade-offs in play.
So another local issue that we've run across here in this community and in East Central Indiana, Muncie, obviously you're familiar with Muncie.
Yeah.
We've transitioned from this manufacturing base where General Motors isn't here anymore. So we've lost, we've got schools that are in deep trouble. We've got cities that are larger than they probably should be, and they're still trying to deliver services like it's 1970 instead of 2018 or 2017, whatever the current year is, 2018. You've got downtowns that are decaying, and then people will say, well, we need to save these buildings. We need to save this business that's there. What should... a community that used to be 70,000 people that's now to 50,000. What are these leaders supposed to be doing?
Yeah. I mean, one, you have to recognize reality. You cannot preserve the town that was because it's just not anymore. I think the other thing we know, and I have a colleague at Ball State who does this work with my colleague Mike Hicks in the Center for Business and Economic Research, the sort of economic development things that people do, right, these big economic development plans just don't work. They don't work for small towns. They're just not going to save small towns in Indiana or anywhere else. If you want to save those towns, you have to make the towns good places to live. How do you do that? Good schools, good roads, good public safety.
It's the absolute basics.
Right. That's it. And if you want people, we've been joking around. You were talking about the school systems and the problem Muncie schools had. We were talking about all the potholes in the roads in Indiana and Michigan, right? And we can talk all day about the problems with the police, presumably. But even just the first two, right? If you can't get those right, if you can't make sort of roads and parks in a livable place, if you can't have some kind of school system, and again, libertarians can certainly say it doesn't have to be a public school system. If you want to, if you think the way to save your town is to have school competition, privatize your school system, great, do it. But what residents care about is not so much the delivery mechanism, but the delivery product.
It has to exist. You don't care the road you're driving on. You don't care if the city owns it, the county owns it, or if it's Steve Horwitz's road.
My road's right.
I just need a road to drive on.
Yeah, that's right. And one without giant potholes. Same with the schools. Are the schools good? That's what parents ultimately care about. I mean, obviously if it's going to cost $100,000, but can you, are the schools good? Is my neighborhood safe? Can I get to places? And you're not going to save your small town by attracting Amazon. You're not going to save your small town by frankly attracting any sort of real manufacturing anymore. The way you're going to do it is by making it a good place to live. If you make it a good place to live and people come, then the restaurants and the other things, will follow. Frankly, Muncie has its problems, but there's a couple of spots in Muncie where stuff's happening, right?
There are some very nice downtown Muncie, and
is pretty nice. And I drive on on Kilgore, there's that new mixed use thing that's going up on Kilgore. That's like what is it, a little piece of Brooklyn landed in Muncie here, right? So there's things happening there, and I think that's it's that shift. That shift is going to happen. The hardest part is anytime you have economic change, how do you persuade the people? And there are people who are harmed by economic change. How do you persuade them that in the long run, that they will benefit from this, right? I mean, we've been talking about the farmers and stuff, right? I mean, 100 years ago, 40% of Americans were involved in agriculture. Today, it's 2%, right? Somehow those people who used to be farmers, right, had to be persuaded that it was okay to no longer be farmers, even though sometimes in the short run that was very painful. But over time, we're all better off for that having made that transition.
Tony Roach is watching this live, and he says he was a student of Cecil Bohannon's in 1980.
Yeah, Cecil's been there a while.
And he says the transition from manufacturing base to a service base is working out exactly as expected. And it's just the reality, though. But we've seen, Muncie, Indiana had 2 UAW plants.
Yep.
I think Anderson had 2 to 3. Newcastle had the world's oldest auto factory. In Chrysler, which became Metaldyne, and it's gone now.
Yeah, and look, 2 things. I mean, they're not coming back. And interestingly, it's not because American manufacturing has declined in the sense of manufacturing output. We're just really, really good at it. We don't need as many people as we did before. So those jobs, in terms of jobs, those aren't coming back. And I think the other part of this too is how in a world in which we see this dynamic change all the time, the best thing we can do for people is make sure that they have that their education is such that they have a set of skills that's sufficiently flexible, or have some set of skills that are never going to go away. You're an electrician, you're never going to hurt for work, right? You're never going to hurt for people. Are going to have to put power somewhere, and you're going to have And I tell students all the time who are struggling, I said, don't think you have to be in college, right, to make a good living and have a happy life. There's plenty of other things you can do that are satisfying, that are good work, and that will pay reasonably well. Because there will always be a need for electricians and plumbers and HVAC and computer tech and all the rest, right? And so that's if you want to start thinking about where the job's going to be, how do you have the skills to sort of adjust on the fly? It's great to have tech skills and want to be a coder or whatever, but even short of that, right? Just thinking about what is it that will always be there.
Sometimes it's just easier for community to grow when it's on virgin ground, too. You live in Fishers, Indiana, which in 1990 had 2,000 people. There's 100,000 people in Fishers now, and Delaware County's gone the opposite way, where Muncie's gone from 70,000 to 50,000.
That's right, and I do think one of the trends we're going to see an increased trend towards density and urbanization. I think younger people really do want to live in those environments, right? I mean, Fishers is not, Fishers is suburban in a way that isn't, different from, say, a Brooklyn or a whatever, but still, right, sort of that living in those places in sort of walkable space or in dense space is, I think, going to become more and more popular. So
you can just look at Hamilton County as on the whole. It's the fastest growing county in the state of Indiana. It's the northern suburb of Indianapolis. Whereas over here, you get an economy that was based on is either agricultural or was automotive, and now it's. Right. They're becoming bedroom communities at best,
right?
Where you're traveling to work.
Right, and the key here always is, what kind of people are you bringing in? Are they coming in with, economists would say, are they coming in with human capital, with skills and so on? That's what's going to make these places livable, and they're only going to come, going back to the earlier stuff, if you have a place that's got, that's got schools and sort of parks and roads that work and is safe. That's if you provide the basics. The markets and everybody else can do all the other stuff, right? However, you're providing those basics, just make sure they're there.
So do you think, like, the addition of, Ivy Tech's got all these regional campuses. Do you think that's an important part of retooling or resetting these communities up where Rushville, Newcastle, Muncie, they've all got these Ivy Tech campuses?
It can be, right? I mean, I think that's one way in which people can retrain and sort of get a new set of skills. The problem, but the public policy problem, of course, is we just don't know what those skills are, right? So we can't say, well, we need to put everyone in the training programs to code this language. No, we just don't know, right? So it's, again, these kind of general sets of skills, whether they're more trade skills or whether they're, more tech or communication, whatever it might be, right? But thinking in terms of how do I acquire a set of human capital that leaves my options open, because I don't think we're going to, the days of, and I'm not sure, by the way, that these days ever existed the way myth suggests, but certainly there's not going to be those days of 30 years with the same company anymore, if it was ever true. But now I think people are just going to move around more, and you have to have that sort of flexibility to do.
And I heard Ben Shapiro talked about that in his show last week. He was talking about, people don't stay in the same job for 30 years anymore. It's just not it's not as feasible. We like to think that we're going to, but people are moving around a lot more than what we were. You don't work in the factory and you make $30 an hour at 1970s inflation.
Right, and look at how many people. I mean, you're an Uber driver, right? Look how many people are sort of engaged in that kind of independent contracting work too.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think that. I don't think that we are in a bad spot in America as far as jobs go, because we see all the time, like, I don't know if you see it all the time, but everybody making the claim that in 15 years we're going to need a universal basic income because robots are going to take all our jobs.
No, I'm not worried about that.
No.
Not worried about that.
I think that's a far-fetched theory.
Are you anti-universal basic income as a libertarian? This is the theory that basically we just need to give everybody needs a $30,000 a year stipulation from the government just to basic to start you out.
So there's
welfare
a bunch of there's different versions of this, right? I mean, for me, if and it's a huge if you could convince me that we would replace the entire existing welfare structure with an annual cash grant either to everyone or people below a certain income, right, and wipe out I would take that as a improvement over the status quo, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that trade is unlikely to happen, right? I mean, the political forces are unlikely to resist.
Plus.
Yeah. I mean, there's to give up right. It's an and plus. That's right. And that's a disaster, right? So in the real world of sort of actual existing political incentives, it's hard to imagine a scenario under which that's going to be an improvement. But in theory, if we could wipe out the existing structure and replace it with that kind of annual cash grant, again, there's variations on how you would do that.
Well, there have been estimates that say, if we got rid of all of the bureaucracy that surrounds welfare, then all of the families that are on it, every family of four that is on welfare should be able to receive, what was it, like
70 or 80,000?
Yeah.
So, okay, but the interesting, and that's true, and that suggests a question, which is, who are the real beneficiaries of the welfare state?
Yeah, that's been the question for a long time, and that's
right, exactly.
Yeah, that's where I see the
value.
It's
middle class bureaucrats who have benefited the most from it, not poor families.
It's the administrators, and the politicians who give it out.
That's right, who have that leverage.
Yeah. To know that the welfare state is not going to go away, you can just see the public outcry that's come out in the last 2 weeks since the Trump administration came up with their plan.
Send everybody HelloFresh.
To send them boxes of food instead of letting them choose on their own.
Yeah, that's been crazy. And it was funny because right after he announced that, one of my libertarian friends on my Facebook page was like, I can see why a lot of Democrats are really going to support this. And I was like, no.
Yeah, no. This and it's a red and blue flip, right? Because for years Republicans, conservatives, libertarians have argued, no, we ain't gonna give people cash grants, right? We don't want to give them stuff. We give them cash grants. That's more efficient, and it's true, right? And sort of Democrats, liberals have said
central planning,
right? Democrats, liberals have said no, we don't want to do that. They'll we want to give them particulars, and now Trump says, all right, we're just going to give them these boxes of food. Like, no, we can't. Lefties can't say can't do that, and the conservatives saying, yeah, give them boxes of food. Like, wait, what?
That's
you guys just flipped again, right? Stop.
Yeah, my thing was if Michelle Obama had made this a part of her Make America Healthy plan, like, would you have had a problem with it?
Right. That's an excellent
How is
question.
this any different than whenever the federal government took over school lunches from the local school boards? Like that, it's whatever.
Excellent
man,
question.
we covered a lot more in this episode than what we had planned on the show notes, and I have one more question for you. You have your undergrad degree is in economics and philosophy, right?
Yeah, double major. Yep.
So I mentioned who I've read in philosophers. Yeah. Who are your most influential ones?
That's an interesting question. I mean, when I was, this is funny given my Facebook post from earlier this afternoon, but certainly when I was in high school, I read Rand. I read Ayn Rand, and I went through a period, right, where that was the thing. But in terms of I don't think so much in terms of philosophers anymore. There's books I love. Michael Polanyi, who's actually a chemist but a philosopher too. His book Personal Knowledge is a wonderful piece of philosophy. And if you think of people like Hayek, who is one of my favorite economists, who's also writes sort of philosophically and those
a
ways
lot
too.
of times those go hand in hand.
Yeah. So these days I tend to think in terms of who are my favorite sort of thinkers as opposed to my favorite philosophers. So it's a hard question for me to answer, and the answer to some degree has changed over the course of my life too.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll change with me too. Yeah. I had to put that in there. All right.
Well, very good. Well, we're getting to that part of the show where we talk about final thoughts. Is there anything, Steve, that we've missed that you wanted to talk about, or a way to follow you, and any of that we need to people need to be checking into?
Yes. So keeping tabs on all things Horwitz. The best way is to follow me on Facebook. I have a regular personal page. I have a public figure page. The personal page, I'm at just about 5,000 on the.
I think you had to abort somebody for me to add. I literally couldn't comment on anything.
Right. Well, that's because I have it set. The only way you can comment is if you're a friend. That's the only way I can control craziness in my comments.
If you want to get on some good debates, then you need to get on the Horwitz page.
Right. So you can, at the very least, you can follow me. If you're watching tonight. And you want to send me a friend request, send me a message too, and say, "Hey, I heard you on Boss Hog of Liberty," and I'll try to bump you to the top of the list if I can, because there's like 200 people waiting. So following me on Facebook is a good idea. You can follow the public figure page too. I don't update it; it's mostly professional stuff. I don't update it as much. Other places you can find me: Bleeding Heart Libertarians. I still blog there. Not a lot recently, because of the health issues. I am from time to time blogging at the Cato Institute's libertarianism.org, which is another great resource, by the way. We haven't mentioned that one. All kinds of stuff
they
there.
Are great.
I still do blog at coordinationproblem.org, which is the Austrian economist site. So those are I think, kind of the best ways to follow me. Again, Facebook's the best. Even if you're not, if you follow me but not a friend, you can still eat some popcorn and observe from the sideline, even if you can't jump into the mosh pit.
Now, you keep saying Austrian economics. That means you're the ones that don't believe in throwing rocks through windows to stimulate the economy.
Yeah. That's like the nice version of what people often say. But yes. We can do, if you want, we do a whole other show on that sometime.
We'll mark it down. We'll have you back for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here, Steve.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. It's been great.
Awesome. We'll keep bantering. We'll have final thoughts. I'm sure Aaron has something saved up for us over there.
Oh, no.
You drive around and sell stuff all day. You don't have a libertarian soapbox?
Oh, no. I just am glad to get back, into podcasting.
It's been a minute since you've been on any We Are Libertarian stuff.
Well, yeah.
You've had some life changes.
Well, yeah. I mean, when podcasts are brought up in court as a reason for divorce, I kind of I had to cool it there for a little while.
I had to relax.
Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable adding kerosene to that fire. So.
We're glad that's all behind you, and you're here with us now.
Are you any closer to moving to Newcastle?
Metamora is closer, I guess. But we're still an hour away. Like I said, Metamora.
You could fix
Martinsville's an hour.
Yeah, if you lived here, you could come over and fix the little soft spot I have in front of my oven.
Yeah, I know. You and Jeremiah are always hiring
my
me.
entire kitchen needs to be redone. Sarah, we're getting married in July, and I think that's the first project Sarah has for me is redoing that kitchen
Every
floor.
time he has a party or invites us over for dinner, I end up in his crawl space or his attic and tricks me into doing some kind of project.
He's really good at it, and the way he does it. The way he does it is he's sneaky, right? Because he's like, "Hey, you have anything going on Saturday?" And your first thought is, "Well, no, I can go over there, drink a beer or whatever." And then so you say, "No, I think I'm good." And then he goes, "Okay, good. I have an outlet that needs installed." All it's going to take is just getting in my crawl space,
Steve,
which is full of spiders.
Tom Sawyer is like my spirit animal. The whitewashing of the fence, I learned that early. If you need something done around the house, you make it fun and you make it a party and everybody comes over and hangs out. I have a great time. The work gets done, and damn it, I force friendship on everybody.
Well, if you're paying in beer, people come.
Yeah. I have an entire beer fridge dedicated to home improvements.
There you go.
He does. That he does.
Well, Aaron, thanks for coming. Thanks for making your first appearance on the Boss Hog podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
If people want to follow you, what do they do?
You could find my Facebook. I still have 3,000 friends, so there's plenty of room for crazy still on there.
I'll send you my extras.
Exactly, there you go.
That's what you need is more crazy in your life.
Yep, just search Aaron Ewert. I'm on there, and I occasionally stir up the pot and get people going.
You like to stir the pot more than just occasionally.
Yeah, I just walk away. I just let the madness ensue.
Someday you'll get back to the meme making.
Yeah, someday. Yeah, that was another reason for divorce. That was the my lawyer was like, okay, that's a new one. Memes for
the first guy to get divorced and have memes be blamed.
Memes got brought up in court and podcasting.
The second lady, Karen Pence, was in the Indianapolis Star today. I think she spoke to CPAC or somebody. And said that the vice president is going around drawing political cartoons on the weekend. He's doing like old school memes now. That's his thing.
Yep, hand drawn
memes, and he drinks in Old Duels too.
Yep, he likes Which is really interesting because I've said on this show before, I don't agree with a lot of Pence's, his fundamentals. But if you want a man with character to look up to, then by God, he stands by everything that he says.
Absolutely.
And she said that he loves really thin crust pizza and he likes to wash it down with an O'Doul's, and that is like my exact favorite meal is a really thin crust pizza when washing it down with a beer. Like I love that.
I don't know that O'Doul's can.
I don't know. Yeah,
I'm sure
you can't
O'Doul's
really
counts
say
as a
it's
beer. But yeah.
You get all the calories, none of the alcohol.
Yeah. Well, that's a lose-lose situation.
It's the way it goes. So, Dakota, you signed a bunch of autographs over the weekend with, or on Tuesday night. You became the rock star. Did you get any job opportunities in these campaigns trying to hire you?
Nope, I never got any job opportunities. I was kind of disappointed about that because I figured at least Jonathan Lamb, he'd offer me something, but he didn't. A lot of people did ask me if I worked for Jonathan Lamb's campaign, and I was like, no. I'm part of the press, ma'am. No. No, but I have a couple of final thoughts here. The first thing I want to do is plug the Libertarian Party's area convention, so the District 6 area convention, and it's hosted by the Henry County Libertarian Party here at Montgomery's Steakhouse in Spiceland. So we have the entire back little convention space rented out. I just got the menu, and we are going to have your choice of 2 different meats, some green beans and some mashed potatoes. It's not going to be all pasta, and we got a little bit of a discount, so that it's going to be $3 cheaper per person than what it was last year. So it's still a really good opportunity for everybody to come out, meet candidates. We're going to nominate candidates. Everybody can see how it's all done. Hang out with some good liberty-minded people.
It's a meet and greet with Dakota Davis and Jeremiah Morrell, if nothing else.
Yes, of the Boss Hog of Liberty. So
bring your T-shirts. We'll sign them.
Yep. Tom Firkenhoff is coming. I know that I mentioned him last week. And Mark Rutherford, another previous guest of the show, Secretary of State candidate, will also be there. And
Chairman Tim McGuire, who's been on the show.
Yes, Tim McGuire.
It's a chance to meet like 6 Boss Hog of Liberty guests all in one spot.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a great time. And
one
thing is that we really need to make sure that everybody buys a ticket. Like this is a ticketed event. It's how we pay for the food and for the facility.
And it's limited. There's only 40 tickets, so I think you guys need to buy them quick.
Yep, you gotta snatch them up. So, and then the second thing I want to do is give a shout out to Justin Stevens and Americans for Prosperity once again for the opportunity for me to go out to the Senate debate. That was incredible. It was an awesome opportunity. I really, really enjoyed myself and enjoyed just meeting people and being there. It was awesome. If you want to follow me, you can always add me, Dakota Davis, on the Facebook and at Atokad Savad on the Twitter.
Very good. Thank you, Dakota. A couple final thoughts from me. Last week's Robin Miller podcast was fantastic. That's been well received. Lots and lots of people have seen the post and commented and liked it. We expanded the reach of the podcast a long way. Robin is fighting cancer. We talked about that last week, and if you go back and look at that link, there's a little eBay store selling. A fellow named Marshall Pruitt is selling stickers, commemorative stickers with A.J. Foyt and Robin Miller on them. $25 get you 2. They're on eBay. I think so far they've sold over $5,000 in stickers. Money's going directly to Robin to
awesome.
to pay for his medical expenses as he's fighting this thing. So we appreciate him being so generous with his time last week. And if you guys have had the opportunity to listen to that, jump on that eBay store and help him out a little bit. That'd be awesome. Final thing from me, the next week we have Dave Ring on the show. He's running for state senate, Democrat candidate. It's the northern part of Henry County, and then it's a massive rural district as well. But he's from the Muncie area, runs the downtown farm stand. We're excited to meet Dave and have him on and learn about his platform. He's kind of the Bernie Sanders wing of the world, so it'll be good to have him, but also tying in the ag community. Really interested to learn about him. It's an open seat. The current Senator Doug Eckerty is retiring, so we're excited to have him on, and he'll be on the ballot for about a third of the people in Henry County. Excited about the growth of the show. Everybody that's listening and participating. We thank Steve very much for being here.
My pleasure.
Tonight.
My pleasure.
And we'll catch everybody next week. We'll see y'all soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at WeareLibertarians.com.